Let's review Trillion, God of Destruction, which is an RPG created by CompileHeart in 2015 for the PlayStation Vita and Windows. Trillion, God of Destruction is an unusual RPG with a great concept, but was unable to fully capitalize due to poor pacing and lack of variety. This RPG is like a diamond in the rough, with a lot of rough, but enough diamond to shine in some parts. Normally, RPGs follow the classic storytelling method known as the hero's journey. This allows time for the introduction of characters, their development, the build-up of tension, and a climax somewhere near the end. However, Trillion, God of Destruction, turns the classic arc on its head and starts off in the climax. The final boss basically comes barging within the first minutes. You could defeat the final boss in any chapter, so this game cannot build tension predictably, making for really uneventful middle chapters. Besides starting the game with the final boss battle, the game has an hour-long introduction consisting of non-stop dialogue. The long intro isn't a problem for me. However, the game's pacing gets worse after Chapter 2, due to too much repetition in the dialogue and gameplay. The story is about a threat called Trillion, who has 1 trillion health points. As the Grand Overlord of the Netherworld who fell in battle against Trillion in the intro, you have to send your overlords to face Trillion. Nobody can get near Trillion unless they have a specific item. There's only one such item, so the overlords must take turns to challenge Trillion one at a time. After they fall in battle, they pass the baton to the next overlord, who inherits some of the stats. The damage sustained by Trillion is permanent, allowing you to continue to chip off its remaining 1 trillion health points. You only have a limited number of overlords, and once they all fall, it's game over. Each overlord spends a few weeks training before their encounter. The combat is limited to 2 specific events, which are the Trillion boss fights and the Valley of Swords, which is a small randomly generated dungeon. Every week, you get to challenge a mini-boss called Mokujin, who is a training dummy that's set up to imitate Trillion's move so you can practice against a weaker version of the final boss. The most fun part of the game is the Trillion battle, and by extension, the mock battle with Mokujin. The game uses a mystery dungeon type combat, where the battlefield is split up into square grids, and you can move one step at a time and also move and attack diagonally. The enemy acts only when you act, so this gives you an unlimited time to plan your next move. The boss battle is very tense and has no room for error. A single hit will likely kill you. Thankfully, upcoming attacks are projected as yellow, orange, and red tiles on the floor, giving you a small amount of time to avoid them. But avoiding them is not easy. The boss rarely gives you any opening to attack. If your speed stat is high enough, you might be able to land more hits, but getting stats during training is difficult, especially on the first few overlords. The game is unforgiving, and casual gamers should steer clear of it. If you can clear this game on the first playthrough, then you're quite skilled. Take that as a challenge if you dare. Some people will get bored fighting the same boss again and again, so this game isn't for those craving variety. The game does an excellent job in giving you a variety of selectable upgrades in the form of skills, blacksmith upgrades, and stat upgrades. Because you have multiple overlords, if one strategy doesn't work, you could try a different approach with a different overlord. This game doesn't lock you to a playstyle and gives you room to experiment. Besides the boss battle, the randomized dungeons are not that interesting. They are very limited in design and appeal, mainly due to being randomized and presenting very little variety. With gameplay limited to those 2 battles, you might be hoping that there will be something else to break the monotony, but this is where the game fails. The dialogue that is sprinkled throughout the story is sometimes long-winded, repetitive, and even predictable. You don't get to explore the world. There are very few new characters introduced over the game. Half of the events occur randomly and can repeat a dozen times in a playthrough, so the pacing is all over the place. Still, the dialogue has strong points. Diabolus has an excellent internal monologue. You could feel the weight of the world where the characters are fighting for their very existence. Trillian, God of Destruction, succeeds in conveying the severity of the situation in a way that's rarely seen in an RPG. I like the game's art and UI, but the technology used is quite limited. The game tells the overwhelming majority of its stories through 2D portraits of the characters. The portraits have an idle light animation such as moving hair, but the lip movements are not synced with the English voiceovers. There are a few wonderfully drawn CGs for each character, but that's as far as it goes. Sometimes it feels like I'm playing a visual novel. I respect some of the English voice acting, especially for the main character, Diabolus. The music was composed by Tenpei Sato, who is famous for his Disgaea soundtracks. Overall, I do not recommend this game for mainstream RPG gamers, but it might be worth for niche gamers who are looking for something challenging and unusual. I give this game a 6.5 out of 10. I gave it extra points for its daringness to break the standard formula of storytelling. I could not give it too much credit due to the limited battle content, repetitive dialogue, and poor pacing. If you want to see a playthrough of this game, feel free to check the link in the description below. Thanks for watching, and happy gaming!